The negative effects of labelling, as the name suggests, looks at the effects labelling can have on students, families, parents, and the schooling system. Students are labelled on a daily basis as lazy, dumb, ADHD, dyslexic, autistic, stupid, and many more. You see, personal identity is affected by the perceptions of oneself and of others. You can be labelled as having a disability, or you can be labelled with a specific type of disability. The article talks about how labelling developed in the area of criminology and how there is a stereotype that disabilities and disorders can overlap with criminal behaviour. This puts a great deal of negativity associated with having a disability. There is a belief that the whole area of disability is considered to be a form of negative labelling. Children are unhappy with labels. There is often resistance in diagnosis and medical labelling as this creates unequal relationships. It relates to power, where one group has the power to shape the identity of the other, less powerful groups. When you hear something long enough, you start to believe it, and the article has shown that negative labelling associated with special education damages children's self esteem. Vygotsky said it when he said that if a child is blind, he should be educated, not as a blind child, but as a child. Too often we see students being defined as their disability. That child is autistic, that child is dyslexic, that child is Asperger's. They are not autistic, they have autism. They have dyslexia and they have Asperger's. This labelling leads to lower aspiration in students. The label is not the child is a mix of their strengths and weaknesses. Terminology is crucial in labelling. Simple words such as assessed rather than diagnosed and receiving suitable treatment rather than being treated and cured can make the simplest of differences in negative terminology. Language is a source of power and control, so it is so important we use the right language. I recently went to a seminar where a staggering 93% of teachers did not know the difference between a learning difficulty and a learning disability. If teachers don't even know the difference and are using the wrong terminology, what message is that sending to our students? Language is constantly developing. Words such as imbecile, idiot, moron, and retardation were all words that were used in special needs and did not have a negative connotation surrounded with them. Now these words are insults. So, with our language today, could the words we use in special needs gain a negative stigma in years to come? What this suggests is that the attitudes of society to individuals with cognitive impairments is constant and that changing the language does not change the attitude. It is not labelling that is the issue, it is the perceptions that influence the language. There is negative labelling associated with special schools, which not only demeans the schools but the children that attend these schools. This may be the case, but from research, it was found that parents and students who attended special schools preferred it to mainstream schools and found it more beneficial to their child. I worked in a special school for a few years and found that students who attended these special schools could not survive in a mainstream school. The curriculum can still be met but modified in a way that caters for the high needs of these students that attend these schools. In regards to a diagnosis, many parents felt it helped them in supporting their child by having a label, whilst many parents found it difficult to deal with a diagnosis. A diagnosis is a bittersweet thing and relates to labelling, assessment, funding, and support. It is a harsh reality that without a diagnosis, funding, especially in state schools, is not an option. You need to have a label in order to get money to provide support to the child. You can only get a diagnosis through assessment, which already gives students the label that they are behind the rest of the class. Without that label, teachers cannot provide the correct level of support and cater to the students' needs. Often, students with labels are more likely to be catered for, whereas that student who might have an issue is less likely taken care of. My cousin, who had cerebral palsy and other learning disabilities, received the label retard from other students, which in itself is an atrocious word. The problem with this was not only that she had the label, but also that the people around her were labelled. I was labelled as the cousin of the retard, which I struggled with through most of my schooling. Labels are not just placed on the child with the difficulty or disability, but everyone who surrounds them, and I think this is an issue that is often overlooked. Negative labelling comes down to one thing: a lack of understanding. So, what do? We increase understanding.